are you up? Wanna go grab some lunch?
Okay, let's meet at
Audio Jungle.
Hello and welcome to the 6 o'clock update on Chelsea 1 News. I'm your host, Michael Oshanusi. Explosive phones? Could your handset be packing more of a punch than you anticipated? Samsung's new Galaxy Note 7 has come onto the market with a bang in more ways than one. A fault in the battery has led to numerous phones around the world exploding, and in some cases injuring the unsuspected customer as a result. While some have been badly affected by this incident, others have taken a more light-hearted and jovial view on this situation. Let's hear more on this from Tammy, our social media correspondent.
Thanks, Michael. Here are some clips posted online by Samsung Note 7 users showing their phones post-explosion. As a result of the explosions, several social media platforms have been bombarded with viral memes from all over the world. Okay, now back to you, Michael.
Thank you, Tammy. Now we bring you live to our technology correspondent, Honza.
Thank you, Michael. Most companies in the electronics industry outsource product testing to independent third parties. However, Samsung tested their product in-house. This created a lot of issues surrounding conflict of interest, as the majority of the senior management were pressed for time as they wanted to launch the product before the iPhone 7. As a result, Samsung did not test their product thoroughly, they did not break it or test it to extremes, and failed to recognize that there were problems with the battery. It's almost as if the company wanted to believe that their product was perfect.
This appears to be a clear case of mismanagement within the organization, probably as a result of biases high in the ranks of Samsung. With us tonight is Dr. Marham to explain the relationship between psychological biases and its link to Samsung's failure. Dr. Marham, would you be able to give us some much needed insights into this quite extraordinary story?
Thank you, Michael. I have to say, Hansa was on the right track when he said that Samsung wanted to believe that the product was perfect. This in psychology is known as the confirmation bias. In Daniel Kahneman's words, the confirmation bias basically means a deliberate search for confirming evidence. So in other words, people process information that reaffirms their initial beliefs. So in the case of Samsung, when they tested the Note 7 in-house, they didn't test it to extremes or break it like they should have. They actually designed easy and lenient tests that were all cleared by the Note 7, thus confirming their bias towards believing that the product was fit for use.
That certainly seems to be the case in this matter. I'm sure our viewers back at home must be wondering how we can test the confirmation bias. Dr. Marham, is there any way we can test the confirmation bias?
One of the ways of testing the confirmation bias is through Wayson's selection task, which was devised by Peter Wayson in 1966. So in this experiment, participants are presented with a set of 4 cards, each with a number on one side and a color on the other. They are then presented with a statement and they're asked to flip over cards to test the statement. Our associate Tyus actually ran the experiment and we'd like to play the footage.
There are 4 cards. If a card shows an even number, this means that its opposite side is red. Knowing this, which 2 cards would you flip in order to test this idea?
As you saw from the footage, 100% of the participants flipped over the 2 cards in the middle. The participants flip the card that says 6 to check if the opposite face is red. They then flip the red card to confirm their belief that the opposite side of it will be an even number. The fact that they believe that the opposite side of the red card will be an even number and then they flip it to check is an exhibition of the confirmation bias.
So, if flipping the second card confirms their bias, which cards would an unbiased person pick?
So the cards that should have been flipped over would be the even number card and the yellow card. By flipping over the yellow card, we're trying to check if the proposition is invalid. Since we're trying to prove it to be false, we are not exhibiting a confirmation bias.
So going back to Samsung, what kind of steps could be taken to avoid confirmation bias?
Well, first thing first, companies need to acknowledge the fact that confirmation bias does exist and it does affect operations. And in the case of Samsung, they need to acknowledge and accept the fact that it did affect the launch of the Samsung Galaxy Note 7.
Or they could have outsourced the product testing to third parties like Apple does.
We can do that. That is quite a feasible option like Dr. Hanzo said. But we have to keep in mind that bias is not only in the form of a confirmation bias, but also third parties can also be subject to biases.
That concludes our special report on the Galaxy Note 7. This is Michael signing off from Chelsea 1 News. Thank you and good night.